Hey everybody, I'm Lloyd, CEO of ShipCarbon, and I'm here with Qayyum Rajan, our head of carbon markets. So today we're going to talk about fractionalization. We're big fans of voluntary carbon credit markets. We think they incentivize the creation of further advanced technologies that remove excess carbon and other emissions from the atmosphere. Creating these types of markets is the only way to really push technology. Monetizing these things early is the thing that will push new technologies to become cheaper and more effective and make a bigger impact. In this previous video, which you can find the link in the description, we talked a lot about the voluntary carbon credit market, what they mean for organizations that are purchasing them from companies like ShiftCarbon. In this video, we're going to talk about our unique approach to carbon credit sales and how our fractionalization engine works. Let's just talk a little bit about fractionalization in general. So, what is fractionalization? Basically, just refers to uh, breaking down a larger asset into smaller, more manageable units that can be bought and sold by investors. This happens a lot in the financial markets, particularly among stock market equity brokers. They'll take a very expensive stock that the average retail investor, would have a tough time buying, more than a couple shares of, and break it down into smaller units so that they can own those in their account. This really allows investors to purchase a portion of an asset. We take large carbon credit purchases and fractionalize them by breaking them down to smaller units that can be bought and sold by investors and users. We can do this because we built a platform that tracks fractionalization while maintaining the verification standards required to create and retire the credits as a verifier. So Q, maybe we can talk a little bit about why we're doing this and how we're applying it.
Yeah, I mean, there's two main issues with the carbon markets, which require fractionalization. The first is, as you mentioned, things are sold in large amounts. In this case, as we mentioned in our previous videos, each carbon offset is 1 ton of carbon, which is actually quite a lot because, if you're a big nuclear plant or a big plant, just doing a lot of things like that's not going to be too much. But if somebody's offsetting the delivery of a piece of clothing or just something that they purchased online, it's a much smaller amount. Like you're talking kilos, which is like cents of carbon, sometimes even grams. And so when it comes to time to do these sort of micro emissions, that's kind of one place that this comes in a big way, or in a small way, I should say. And on the other hand, the other component is that similar to the assets that you mentioned, some of the best or the new innovative carbon credits are quite limited and also expensive. In some cases, they're 10 to 100 times as expensive as something like traditional reforestation or renewable energy, especially some of these that are in the removal space. And so what this allows is for us to take bits and pieces of these carbon offsets and structure them into something that's a little bit more like a portfolio. And so you can have these little bits and pieces, which then allow you to spread risk, but also have exposure to multiple things at once.
Yeah, so I think that's a very important concept. Not only the idea of, creating these portfolios, but also the idea that we want to create demand for these more expensive, more innovative, more impactful carbon credits. What are some other real world examples where this comes into play?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things here is depending on an organization, you might have different requirements. So you might need to maintain a certain price of carbon, where you do want exposure to many different things, but you have to purchase a certain amount and you have a certain budget. So that's a good place where we might be able to take some offsets that are a little bit cheaper that come from more traditional sources like renewable or wind energy, and we can combine them with other components that might be a little bit more expensive but meet certain goals. And that gives a holistic way to provide a pool or portfolio of carbon offsets that can be used to do something specific. In this case, like we have our balanced avoidance pool, which gives exposure to multiple different things for a target price. Um, Another place that this might come in is someone that has the objective of, let's say, being localized. So, they work in a specific region and they want to offset, and play a part in the community that they're emitted in, right? Maybe in this case, they do something in California or they pass through California, and they want to have exposure to that. Some of those offsets might be very expensive, or they might be limited in quantity. And so this is where you can take those and sort of piece them together. A good example that we see sometimes is cruise ships wanting to use blue carbon, which is a really innovative carbon credit, but it is quite expensive. It's in the order of 10 to 20 times more expensive. So to do that for the whole offset might be unsustainable, but they can actually play a big part in this and just take, again, a fraction of it, which we can enable.
Yeah, so I think the fractionalization really helps shape the carbon product into something that's a lot more palatable to the goals of the end user. I think that's the main benefit from our perspective is that we're trying to
Hmm.
create products that match the needs of our users. A lot of times when a new carbon project is being created, they're not thinking about the end user in mind. It's just a carbon
Right.
project that has, and there's not really much thought as far as how does that product make its way to an end user. But whether it's targeting price points, whether it's figuring out a local area or a regional specificity, or whether it's something like a specific type of carbon credit that may be out of reach. So you want to create a portfolio where you have a blended price. These are all, important use cases that, drive demand for the carbon credit market. So we think this is super exciting and really appreciate you coming on Q and chatting about it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.